My name is Jim Ryan, and I'm the new instructional designer here at EWU. My job here is to take a look at the programs, courses, and people from a different point of view, to see how all these Lego pieces fit, and to imagine how I can help put them together differently to make something new and amazing. Welcome to the Play to Learn podcast. Today, I'm meeting with Marc Lapointe. He's an extremely talented and passionate art professor at Eastern Washington University. In our conversation about active learning, he shares his love of inspiring students, found materials, science, and white-hot molten iron. So, sit back, relax, and enjoy.
Your hobbies matter.
They do matter.
Yeah.
But, hello Marc, how are you doing?
I'm doing well. How are you?
I'm doing great. So we've been going back and forth a little bit, saying that we just really had to get together and have a chat.
Yes.
Because of all the cool stuff that's going on here and the art and the collaboration things that you're doing on campus. Mm-hmm. But before we get into all that, let's just tell me a little bit about you. Like, where do you come from? What's your origin story? All that cool stuff.
All that cool stuff. Origin story. So I'm originally from Moscow, Idaho, which is about an hour and a half south of Cheney. I became an artist completely by mistake. I actually really hated art, and then my 10th grade guidance counselor accidentally put me into an art class with Mel Seeby, and I was really nervous about taking this course, and in walks Mel Seeby, and she has she has the cool haircut, her hair is streaked all of these different colors, she has the aviator sunglasses. I later found out that she was involved with an all-women's motorcycle gang called the Satin Wheels, and she gave us a piece of paper and some watercolors and put on some CCR and just said, go make something. And it was from that day in September 2005 that I was like, okay, art is the thing. And so, you go through the art-related academic journey, you get the BFA, you get the master's, and you search for the adjunct employment. And then I am very lucky to have found myself here at Eastern as a lecturer.
That is a hell of a story. It's kind of like Hunter S. Thompson-esque.
Yeah.
Here's your teacher.
Oh, yeah, totally.
It sounds a lot like my grandma. You probably would have loved my grandma. So she had like 5 kids and whatever. And after my grandpa died, she started working for the post office. But she got really cool because she'd wear these full body leather jumpsuits and ride a motorcycle to and from work.
Yeah.
And she had this big bouffant hairdo and wore the same kind of aviator sunglasses, and she could walk faster than I could when I was like 10 years old. She was a beast.
Shit, places to go. I understand.
I
you
know,
got to
right?
get going.
Yeah. So it's cool when you get a chance to run into those people that just have that personality and that passion, and then it gets transferred into you.
Oh, for sure. Absolutely. And I've been fortunate enough to have a really tremendous slew of really influential educators in my life. Can I give a shout out? I'd like to give a huge shout out to these incredible individuals who they really truly continue to not only inform the way in which I make art, but also the way in which I teach my students. Sending a huge wave of gratitude to Mel Seeby, Amy McMurtry, Stacy Eisenbarger, Val Carter, Greg Turner-Raman, Andrea Stanislav, Tamsi Ringler, Monica Haller, and Christina Schmid. Thank you.
I mean, yeah, if it wasn't for these influential people in our lives, we wouldn't be where we are.
Correct.
And it's so circumstantial how you run into them sometimes.
Mm-hmm.
And then other times it can be purposeful, like if you go and seek them out. Was there that kind of a process? Was it all circumstantial, or did you go and find these people specifically?
It feels, when I reflect on meeting these individuals for the first time, all of them actually feel remarkably circumstantial, and like I could not have possibly planned my interaction with them. There's no way. The first time I met Tamsi Ringler, for example, she's my long-term mentor / collaborator / friend / fellow ironcaster. It was at Franconia Sculpture Park in 2015, and she came out of the artist in residence house, and we interfaced, and it just felt very almost cosmic. I'm not like a particularly spiritual person, but it just felt very beyond language. It just felt right. And ever since that day in 2015, we've been, thick as thieves working together. And I actually can reflect back on all of these incredible mentors in my life, and I feel very similarly about all of them, that it just so happened that I was in the right place at the right time and have been so lucky to be influenced by them.
So tell me about your art journey. What did it start with and what has it evolved into since then?
Sure. In hindsight, when I reflect upon really diving into my creative practice back in 2005, it was less about anything specific that I was making and more about the fact that I was making. One of the great things that Mel Seeby did and still does in the arts is she provided space for her students just to exist and make and be vulnerable in the act of making. For me, that was a hugely pivotal thing for me. 2005 was a really big year in terms of discovering parts about myself that I had not yet realized. And to feel safe in the act of making was huge for me. It was huge. And that is how I approach my making now. Is for me, it's less about an object or an end result or a thing that I make and more about the act of doing. My current body of work and the things that I am currently interested in are really about these very strange and kind of uncanny empathies that we have with the world. So I got introduced to the world. This story is important, I promise. I need to close my eyes too.
There's no restriction on how long this takes, by the way, so you can elaborate on and
Okay.
chase whatever rabbit holes you want.
I will chase down some rabbit holes. So I entered graduate school at the University of Minnesota, primarily doing performance-based practices. So I was working a lot with my body, getting myself in all sorts of curious situations, and I was really fascinated by the body as a kind of a site or a medium. And then Tamsy Ringler and I, we had this really transformative conversation. Tamsy is highly involved in the world of metal casting. She's also a very prolific climate activist and uses her art to talk about these really global and pressing issues that we find ourselves facing and have found ourselves facing for a long time now. And she talked to me about how the iron that we pour at an iron pour at an atomic level really is not so different than the iron that circulates within our bloodstream. I mean, granted, one is 2,500 degrees and one is not. And when she told me that, I kind of saw stars and I thought to myself, wow, what a beautiful way to think about existing and living in the world, is that down to a molecular level, we can relate to the world around us. I mean, it's incredible. Like the iron that's in our blood being the same at an atomic level that the iron that's maybe in some machinery or some crushed up rocks. It's a kind of mind-blowing thing to think about. And that gesture and that thought has really been circulating throughout my work. So currently I'm working with cast iron, with a whole bunch of found materials, so things that I just pick up on the side of the road or in dumpsters sometimes. If I use clay, it's clay that I've dug up myself from a space outside of my hometown in Idaho. If it's wax, it's from a local apiary. And I'm really interested not just in the molecular structure of the materials I use, but how those materials are really embedded with a very deep and personal content. I mean, you can smell specific smells and instantly get transported back to a different time in a different place. There's a certain perfume that I can't remember the name of right now, but if I smell it, I'm instantly in Hemet, California, in my grandmother's sitting room with the plastic cover over her couches. It's instant, and I'm fascinated by that. What is that? Why is it that I can walk by a toy on the side of the road that's been discarded and have a very kind of knee-jerk emotional response? I mean, I'm probably revealing something very deep and personal about myself if I see that, but I'm fascinated by that relationship that we have with the material world.
Well, and you connect two very important dots there, because art isn't just art for art's sake. It connects to so many other subjects at so many different other levels. like when you're talking about the molecular level, the iron, we're talking about chemistry and science. And then when you're talking about an emotional connection to certain objects or smells, that goes into psychology. So art really becomes this blend of these different subject matters.
Oh, for sure. I mean, I frequently view art as this really weird nebulous fluid that runs between so many different disciplines of study, of personal, academic, conceptual interest. It's really a vulnerable and kind of volatile thing in the best way possible.
And when you're talking about the found materials, is it Alyssa who's one of the presenting?
Yes.
She, I think, is very much inspired by you in her approach to artwork, in that she loves going around and finding these different clays and trying to come up with different combinations and see what happens when you fire them. And then we've gotten talking, because I do, raw counting and then gold painting on the side. And she's like, "Oh, I'd love to find some iron." I'm like, "Well, the way you do it is when you go out on the river and you go gold
Yeah.
panning, you end up with a bunch of iron in there, along with, if you're lucky, some gold, and then you just pan it out, and you can get a magnet and then scoop it all up." And then she was floored by that. And my wife had just lucked into a whole other set of gold panning pans, so I had an extra one. So I brought it in and handed it over to her and say, "Hey, look, go out and play with this and see what you come up with." And then she just got all excited, and that got me excited, because I love seeing this passion flow from one inspirational instructor to a student, and then seeing that student become another inspirational instructor for somebody else, and just bringing that passion and keeping it going is just so awe-inspiring.
Oh, well, thank you. Yeah, it's really kind of great when you start to excavate sites, especially magnets are great, right? So in 2017, I got a grant to go tour the Pacific and Inland Northwest and document it. And that was the first time I'd ever done that as an artist, really kind of investigating it more deeply than I had in the past. And a friend of mine and I, we went to the wreck of Peter Iredale, which is this tourist location on the Oregon coast. And he brought a magnet with him. And near the shipwreck, he took the magnet and kind of glided it across the sand. And all of these iron fillings just started kind of like shooting up and attaching themselves to the magnet.
It's everywhere. I mean, you wouldn't think that iron would be everywhere, but it is. I mean, you can drag it on a beach. You can go to the middle of the Sahara Desert and drag a magnet along that sand, and it will come up full of iron. Iron is everywhere.
It's in spinach.
Oh, yeah. I mean, I didn't. Oh, yeah, that's right. It is in spinach, isn't it?
Yeah. Anyway, yes.
Yeah. Well, there you go. And health.
Yeah.
Health and nutrition. There's some more for you right there. So got the found materials. And then you recently have been doing more of that dot connecting with engineering by taking a bunch of students over to the engineering department and with Phil Apple. Now tell me a little bit about that.
Yeah, I think it was about a month and a half ago. One of the BFA students swung by my office and was very excited and expressed, "Oh my gosh, Mark, you need to go check out this space. It's in the computer engineering building. It has all of these really great pieces of equipment." So I got really excited and I marched right over there and I was like, "Oh my gosh, what is this world?" So then I emailed Dr. Apple and received a very enthusiastic response back. And then myself and my incredible teaching assistant, Jean Marshall, and we scheduled a tour and were just blown away by the potential. At one point, I think Dr. Apple said something about, "We have tools to make tools. So if you have any spare diamonds, we can mill those into making tools." And my thought was like, gosh, I don't know if I'll ever have spare diamonds. However, it was just exciting to see the potential for the collaboration and what that could do to really unite these disciplines, which on the surface seem to have very little to do with each other. But the moment you scratch that surface, they have everything to do with one another.
Yeah, and I've worked in higher education for, I want to say, 15 or more years, and one pattern I've noticed is how every department is formed, and then the teachers get hired into that department, and they do all their work within that department, and they never really go outside of that department to explore anything else in the university unless they have to go to some kind of interdepartmental meeting. Sure. And so they really don't understand all the resources that exist between those departments. And so there's this silo structure that really needs to be melted down, and people need to realize that the more that you allow this interconnectivity between the departments, the more you can grow together and the more fulfilling educational opportunities you can give to your students.
Oh, I fully support that. And the phrase that sticks out to me is rising water raises all boats. If one wants a career in public art, you are going to be working with a team of people. That's just the reality. Whether you want to or not, you're going to be working with a large group of individuals. You're going to have to make things like physics proof and public proof and dealing with these very real world situations that aren't necessarily directly taught, but can only be learned through experience. So why not shed light on that early on in someone's career?
And I believe one of the times that I came in and we were talking, you discussed how you had a class where you made sure that your students understood how, like you were saying, they need to learn how to work with these other specialties, and they need to be able to understand a business model and how it functions. They need to be able to understand taxes. I mean, I know I was never taught taxes anywhere in my college experience. Nobody even brought it up. So being able to get them to understand and it is fundamentally a business that they're going to go into. If you're doing artwork, you really have to look at it in a business sense. I've been to a number of different galleries where an artist is the owner or whatnot, and they sell all their material there. And they say, sure, you have to be an artist, but you have to also understand marketing. You also have to understand budgeting, like we were saying, taxes, the legal aspect of things. It's so much more than just the art if you want to make that a business, or even if you want to work for somebody else.
I love this idea of the artist deeply engaged, almost hermetically in their studio, being so in tune with their processes. I think there's something so beautiful about this idea. And the reality is if you want a professional career in the arts, frequently you're wearing dozens of hats. You're not only making the artwork, you're frequently documenting the artwork. You're creating a website, so suddenly you're a web designer to market your own artwork. Social media, whether we want to admit it or not, is a hugely powerful tool in the arts. So you're a social media coordinator. You're sourcing your own supplies. You're budgeting your materials. You're working with a team of people. You're writing grants. You're writing artist statements. You're writing proposals. You're engaging in all of these different facets that are pretty much totally parallel with running a business.
Yeah, and I think for the longest time, that part really was either not realized or emphasized by a lot of different art departments in different universities. I mean, there is no question that art is the central focus of these students and is the most important thing for them.
Yeah.
But without understanding the rest of the ecosystem that goes into making that art visible, into selling that art, into making a living with that art, you have this thing you've created, and that's about it. You have it.
Which is valuable. And there's a very important, my students would laugh at me, it's a very important professional practices moment to really look at how do you take it beyond just the act of doing, which is very important, and I would argue the most important part.
Absolutely.
But what's the step that moves it from existing, which it can exist quite perfectly fine within a studio, but how does it move beyond that? And that's where those really important professional practices moments come in.
And there's another aspect that goes along with art and produced pieces that can be extremely difficult for students to deal with, and that's critique.
Yes.
Because people can be very supportive, or they can be absolutely, completely cruel in the most inhumane ways sometimes when commenting about somebody's produced piece that they put a lot of their energy and emotion into. And so how do you prepare students for that?
Critique, it's a necessary process. It's an incredibly vulnerable process. And at its best, it can be a really beautiful process. For me, I endeavor to frame critiques as a celebration of student work. And that's not to say that I can't offer constructive criticism, but it takes guts to be an artist. It takes guts to step into something that you haven't done before, even if you have done it before. I mean, I have made so much bad work, I continue to do so. But those moments where the work is maybe a little clumsy or a little awkward, those are the moments where you not only learn the most, but those are the moments where you discover the most as an artist. So for me, I stick to the tried and true method when offering critique. The sandwich. Offer a positive observation. Offer a constructive criticism. Then offer some feedback that wraps up your observations. The only critique that is bad, I would argue, is a critique that doesn't get used. If someone just says, oh yeah, that's really cool, great. I love to hear that stuff is cool, but what does that do? So to kind of disarm the intimidation factor that are critiques, what I like to do is tell my students that the goal is really about discovery and improvement. And being able to really critically assess not only your work, but the work of others. And that's also a really important skill in a variety of career opportunities. The ability to not only deliver feedback, but also receive feedback is such an important skill, really, regardless of what profession that you find yourself in. I mean, we work and live in a world where there's more than 8 billion people. You're going to be interfacing with individuals that you disagree with. That's just fact. So the ability to develop the skills not only to deliver feedback, but also to receive feedback, sift out the things that maybe you're like, okay, well, thank you, next, and really hold on to the things that really resonate with you. That's a skill. It's a very hard skill to learn. It's a very vulnerable process, but it's a really necessary one.
Absolutely. Another thing that can be a challenge, I think, sometimes is attachment and detachment from a piece that you're working on. And how do you decide whether I love it so much that I just need to keep it, it needs to be mine forever, versus I love it, but I also need to pay my bills. And
I think that's a very personal decision for whoever's making the work. There are times where you need to sell the work to, do that crazy thing, like make a living. Like, again, that's a reality that we find ourselves in. I'm fortunate enough to be working at Eastern Washington University to where I do get tremendous support from this place. But that's a big question that I think is very specific to the artist. And what I would say on that too is just because you sell the work doesn't mean the work still doesn't exist within you either. I think the exchange of art-related goods, it's a very beautiful exchange. It's a very human exchange, I think. It can be this very sort of tender moment of offering not only just the end result, but just the amount of time and effort and consideration that goes into creating that thing. A good friend of mine is a potter and a really remarkable artist down in Moscow, Idaho, and she's in her studio constantly selling her wares and preparing her wares during the Moscow, Idaho farmers market. And even though she's in this very intense level of production with her work, I see the amount of care and love that goes into each and every one of those mugs or those other ceramic vessels that she makes. I mean, they're beautiful. They're spectacular. That's not someone copying out or selling out. That's someone doing what they love. And that's a beautiful thing to be able to participate in, even if the only way you're participating in the work is by purchasing it. I mean, that's a really beautiful thing.
Well, I think you also hit on another part of it earlier when you said falling in love with the process of doing it. Mm-hmm. I know there's a couple of things that I was working on in Tinkercad and then printing them out. And the buddy who was kind of mentoring me through this process, because he was an expert in the field, he saw my first piece of work, which was really clumsy. Mm-hmm. I mean, I cannot tell you how hilariously clumsy and awkward it was, but it did work. And then I had like about 4 or 5 different revisions after that. And he was like, well, you should really keep all these just so you can see the progress that you made. And my home is already cluttered enough as it is. And I was like, you know what? These things are in Tinkercad. I can go back and look at it in there, but I cannot keep this crap in my house. I need room.
One of the most liberating things, I think, as an artist is throwing away work that no longer brings you joy.
This brings joy. This does not bring me joy.
Yeah, sometimes you just need to toss it.
Yeah. But that whole process of going through and seeing that progress is amazing. But then learning at every step of the way and seeing the mistakes you made and seeing how you've improved and why. That's the part that brings the most joy for me.
Yes.
Because it's just like an exciting journey. It's an adventure, and you get to be the main character in that adventure.
Yeah. So I keep on talking about the world of cast iron, and I feel like I've learned a lot of life lessons about this. One of the other incredibly wise things that my good friend Tamsi said, and I think this is very important, not just for the world of cast iron, but for all forms of art making. You can make the best mold ever for pouring iron into. You can be the most experienced iron caster or any kind of cast metal. But iron at 2500 degrees is going to do what iron at 2500 degrees wants to do. And I think there's something about that that can be extended to all disciplines, really. I mean, I cannot tell you the amount of times I have made something thinking, oh yeah, this is the winner right here. I'm feeling this, I'm in the zone. I get it to the gallery or the exhibition space or wherever I'm setting it up. And then I go, oh no, what happened? What happened? And then it's always this kind of the odd byproduct of the act of making that has the most, for me at least, the most kind of interest or the kind of gritty awkwardness that for me as an artist is really exciting.
So the last time we emailed before scheduling this appointment, you told me that you were going to an iron casting.
Yes.
And that got me so excited because it's the first time I actually heard about somebody doing it anywhere in the United States, because I've seen videos of it. But then I'm like, God, I want to know all about it. So tell me how it went. What was it like? What did you do?
It was a beautiful experience. It was a really remarkable event. I saw a tremendous amount of effort and care and love and passion. And all of those attributes are really essential to the discipline, and really any discipline. I mean, if you're involved in the world of art, I think many people will frequently ask themselves, why the hell am I doing this? It is so hard to be an artist. It's so hard. It's psychologically demanding. It's physically demanding. It's really demanding in any capacity. And it was totally exhausting to be in Dubuque, Iowa for this iron pour, and probably one of the most invigorating art events that I've been to in a long time. It was absolutely incredible. So Tamsi Ringler organized this really beautiful community event. She worked closely with the city of Dubuque and basically taught a metal casting class to some community members. One of the things that I truly love and appreciate about the world of art, specifically the world of metal casting, is that it facilitates reconnection frequently. It's almost inherent in the discipline. And the opportunity to pour alongside Anna Orovich, and we hadn't poured metal together, gosh, since 2019. It was fantastic. Absolutely amazing. And I arrived there. First of all, the flight getting there was really intense. So I had to leave Spokane at 5:30 in the morning. I got to Denver, and then I had to fly from Denver to Madison, Wisconsin. And then I made my way from Madison, Wisconsin down to Dubuque. And this, I think, is the first sign of just how caring and supportive the group was. One of the students that was taking this metal casting workshop, who I'd never met before, he came and picked me up. He drove an hour and a half just to pick me up from the airport. I mean, right away there, right? We really have this shared spirit. And so we drive down there, and I get to see one of my best friends, and we hug, we talk, we laugh, and then we get to work. And we went to the workshop where the students were just diving in head first. They were helping each other mix sand for their resin bonded sand molds or lift these just colossal forms. Like one of the parts of the sand mold was like 300 pounds. Like we're talking about these huge weights, and we didn't have cranes or a gantry or anything. And so it was all this kind of physical effort. My knuckles right now are almost done healing just from everything that we went through. And we just worked in tandem with one another for a handful of days. And then a couple of days before the pour, more individuals that I had poured with in the past who I hadn't seen since the before times, right? Since 2019, since the pandemic.
It sounds like a quote from Mad Max from in the before time.
You know, it kind of does feel like when you're prepping for an iron pour that you're in some kind of post-apocalyptic outer space pirate ship thing. It's pretty great. And people who I hadn't seen in person for a couple of years, 6 years, 7 years, it was like we picked up exactly where we left off. You know, we broke iron together. Oh, that's a good point. we recycle our iron. So we take a bunch of old radiators and bathtubs and we smash them into the turn of phrase in the iron casting community is Dorito-sized pieces, which is really funny because we all have different definitions of what a Dorito is shaped and sized like. And so you'll get people and they'll all make this gesture where they make a triangle with their hands, but it's all different. Anyway, so roughly Dorito-sized adjacent, I would say. So we break all of this iron together, and I think we broke about 1,300 pounds of iron because that's how much we needed for everyone's mold. There was a team of individuals who were prepping the furnace, named Big Barbie, by the way. It's a furnace that Tamsy built. And it's even the furnaces, they all have their own personalities too. And you'll hear some people say, oh yeah, I always get like a dragon kiss from Big Barbie. And that's when you get like a spark landing on you. We call them dragon kisses in the biz. It's hard to describe if you've never been to one, but I would almost say that an iron pour is this kind of weird, industrial, choreographed, artistic event where you're pouring this liquid metal into a mold and relishing in the experience of it all. One of the things that is so attractive about this discipline is that it's very difficult, if not impossible, to do by yourself. There's a heavy, heavy, heavy community component of it. And what makes that such a beautiful thing is that you can be pouring metal for the first time with someone who you've never met before. And after you pour metal, you somehow feel like you know them in a weird way, but you've never spoken before. The event was really productive. Everyone's molds turned out beautifully. The community was involved. They made some molds, these little relief tiles or scratch blocks. It was just a really full circle, beautiful, invigorating event.
That's awesome. I got to go and do another deep dive just to look into seeing how it's done, because I've seen people melt up aluminum or maybe copper or brass, because I think it has much lower melting temperature than iron, but it takes that much more heat and energy to melt iron. And if you have to break up iron, how do you even break up all those pieces? Like, how does that even happen?
With a hammer.
Really? Just like they're that brittle?
Yeah. Oh, iron is very brittle. Iron is very brittle.
Interesting. So I guess the carbon component that they add in for steel is what makes the steel more bendy.
Absolutely. No, I mean, it shears off, it breaks off in these really nice chips.
Interesting. That is cool. So just beat the heck out of it with a hammer and then melt it all down in this semi-apocalyptic furnace.
The best part about it is that you're decked out in all of these leathers, right? So you look kind of like a warrior.
Some kind of steampunk.
Yeah. Some good friends of mine, Bayani and Aaron, they have actually led workshops on how to customize your leathers to really not only reflect your personality, but really emphasize just the role of equity and inclusion on the pour floor. I mean, these two are an incredible art. I mean, all of the artists who are at this event were absolutely incredible. But there are people who will take their leathers and beautifully customize them without diluting any of the function as a way to really embody and reflect who they are, both on and off the pour floor.
That's crazy. And funnily enough, one of the people that I interviewed before you is a leather worker.
Oh, really?
Yeah, former student and teacher here at EWU. And he opened up his own leatherworking business just like 5 minutes from where I live. And we talked a lot. His name is Grant Pemberton. And he has a really great Instagram feed where he mixes up doing his everyday leather work, but also talking about the philosophy behind what is ethical leather, what's it like to do business ethically, what does it mean to have the small business in the U.S. and make it sustainable. So it's a really interesting way of teaching through social media while doing his art. And he only takes like 10, 15 minutes a day to do these posts, but it has such a large reach and impact. I think it was incredible. So I had to go interview him. And if your students can learn how to do things like that while they're doing their art, that can really take care of a big chunk of that marketing position.
Oh, I strongly encourage, in fact, I require my students to take photographs of their process. There's some interesting stuff that comes up when you just slow down and be like, oh, this right here, what is this? What's this kind of intermediary step? There's something very maybe kind of curious and exciting about this point B out of A through C, right? Like, what's this middle point?
And it's the expressing of that internal monologue that lends itself to the content as well.
Oh, definitely.
I think that was really powerful for him. And I think for anybody doing art, if they want to work on their marketing skills, that is really important to do because it also lets people learn more about you as a person and your dreams, your aspirations, your philosophies, and it creates a better connection with the community who you'd be reaching out to anyways for your artwork.
I get the sense, I can't speak for everybody, but generally speaking, people are very interested in the process of making, regardless of their degree of involvement with the arts or really anything that is a process-driven practice. People are fascinated by it. There's something very alchemist-like about making. It's frequently a process of transformation, and it's a very alluring thing, I think, for individuals to witness.
And one thing I feel is that art, it can be politics agnostic. It doesn't matter which side you are on. If you can tap into art to express yourself, you kind of dip your foot into this collectiveness of expression, and that helps to open your mind a little bit. And it can help people see things from a different point of view, whether you're the viewer or you're the maker. And so it can maybe help also break people out of their mindsets if they get locked into one ideal or the other.
Oh, I mean, I cannot think of a single art movement ever that wasn't in some way offering either a sort of snapshot, an indictment, a critique, even the most apolitical works, or seemingly apolitical works, they always, to some degree, reflect the time in which they are made. I could be wrong. I frequently am, and I fully admit that. But I have a really hard time with this idea that somehow art and life are separate. And I mean, they're deeply intertwined. They're braided together. They're woven together. It's trying to separate them is a little bit like trying to have your peanut butter without your jelly. You know, it's just like one and the same for me.
Yeah, absolutely. Watching art develop through history, through different mediums, and seeing how much experimentation is used by artists in very much scientific ways to achieve an end result has always been really fascinating to me. And it always felt to me like artists were always having to be a scientist in a way, and that they're constantly experimenting and coming up with different solutions.
I mean, just for this most recent mold making class that I taught during the fall quarter, my teaching assistant and I, we worked together very closely to find the lowest amount of supplies that we could use to still achieve the desired result. We ran into some successes, and I would argue more importantly, we ran into some failures, and those served as really important benchmarks for us in that process of experimentation to deliver content and material processes that were not only responsible, socially speaking, but that were also really obtainable for the students.
So you were saying about recovering the material, but was there something that went into like finding different types of fuel for the fire, or other things that would help move the process along more efficiently?
Oh, for the iron casting?
Yeah.
Yeah, I mean, when you're dealing with temperatures of that magnitude, there's definitely some tried and true methods. But there's always new technologies that are being developed. If I recall, I think they're working on, or they have completed, a furnace at Arizona State University that runs off of some type of oil, so it doesn't require the coke or the coal in order to pour.
Yeah, it's like, again, science advances art, and art advances science.
Sure.
Definitely. And then, so what other technologies are kind of on the horizon that you're interested in exploring for artwork?
For myself personally?
Well, for yourself, for your students too, because it bleeds into one bleeds into the other.
I am fascinated by the potential of 3D printing organic material. I don't know what that results in. I don't know where that goes, and I feel like there is tremendous potential there. The part about technology that I always find to be really fascinating is that we can lump technology, or maybe stereotype technology, as just being digital. But a hammer at one point was a pioneering brand new technology. Imagine that. Like, We get excited if our iPhone has a fourth camera or a third camera or whatever. But can you imagine like the sense of discovery? Oh my gosh, if I use this thing, I can do this with a hammer. It's amazing. I'm interested in sort of new innovative technologies, but I think for my own work personally, I'm almost more interested in these kind of analog technologies that don't require electricity. And maybe that's just a reflection of the times where we're so inundated with screens and we're so like, we run off of electricity. It seems like we're always mediated by some sort of digital interface. But as I continue making work, I find myself getting more and more excited about the sort of nitty gritty, the messy, the things that can't be reproduced digitally.
Well, and that's the thing is that, even the most highly advanced technology in the world, it'll always have to take advantage of some of the oldest technology in the world. You can look at a nuclear reactor for generating power. It uses steam. So the technology that went crazy in the 1800s is still being used today for similar reasons, just in a different way.
Yes. Yes. I think to extend what I'm interested in, at this iron pour in Dubuque, the main individual running the furnace, Veronica, who, incredible individual, really prolific maker, she could tell to the minute when we were ready to tap out, when we were ready to pour iron after charging it. She didn't have a watch on her, but she just kind of knew. And that intimacy with the tool of the furnace, there was like a feedback there. There was like a very beautiful relationship there. And that dialogue, that feedback is something that I'm really interested in as the artist.
There was the iron in the blood.
Yeah, there we go.
Merging with the iron in the furnace and understanding that it was time.
Yeah, well, what's great though is it wasn't just Veronica V, who is able to do this. Like metal casters who have been doing it for a long time can look at the surface of the crucible when it's full with molten material and gauge pretty accurately what the temperature of the metal is based on how the surface of the metal is kind of separating. It's fascinating.
That is so cool.
It's amazing. Yeah.
Now you got me like, I want to go see one of these things.
It changes you. It really does. Never in a million years did I ever think that I would be involved in this world. And I'm only involved at a very sort of tertiary level at this point. But I can say for certain that the first time you feel the hot breath of a furnace, it changes you.
I just had this image in my mind of this giant cauldron pouring steel is coming out, and there's hammers clanging in the background, there's sparks flying, and there's like some dirge that everybody's singing.
I thought it was going to be like that too. When I first did it, I thought, oh gosh, here we go. This is going to be some I don't know if I'm ready for this.
But that excites me. Like, I'd be like, that's dope.
What happens, and maybe this is just my own experience, but I've heard a number of other people share something similarly, when they're going to actually pour the metal, if they're on a pour team, there can be all of the noise in the world happening outside, but the pour team itself, it actually gets very quiet. And that was something that was really unexpected for me, that I find myself when I'm pouring metal, whatever metal. I mean, we even have a teeny tiny pewter pourer in our metal shop right now, it's adorable. I love that thing. But even as I'm pouring this little 1 pound crucible, I get, I feel the exhale happen and I get really quiet. And that happens even at the most intense iron pours for me, where as the metal is flowing from crucible to mold, everything feels very quiet to me and very horizontal.
That's so cool. So I guess one of the last questions I have is, you see where everything is now, and you have some amazing students that I've had the wonderful opportunity to meet and converse with, and they have just crazy skills. Where do you see this department evolving to in the next 5-10 years? What is your dream to see happen with it?
Well, I just first want to acknowledge the students. I mean, it's very difficult to have a university without the hard work of our students and the hard work of our faculty and staff as well. Of course, I'm not saying anyone is less important than the other, but our students, I would argue, are really the heartbeat of our art department. I'm in awe of our students here. Not only what they produce, but just the passion through which they make their work. The art department here feels very much like it's going through this kind of dynamic rebirth of energy. It feels like something is rumbling here in the best possible way. This is only my second year here, and I feel so grateful to be part of this community because I feel like something is happening here. In terms of what I hope for in the future, I hope that there's continued levels of collaboration. The art department has been working very closely with the individuals from the mechanical engineering department to sort of lay the groundwork very, I would say, deliberately and with a strong sense of foundation about what are ways that we can collaborate. And I hope that those ripples of collaboration continue. We should be talking with each other, exchanging ideas, exchanging methods and techniques and insights. That's the world we live in. I think siloing off is a detriment. When we can support one another, that's when the really interesting work, artwork, starts to emerge. When things get a little cloudy or a little bit murky. When disciplines start to dissolve and people are playing off of each other and really learning from one another, that's when I see not only the students' faces light up, but that's when I see their work really take off, is when they lean into this process of discovery. And that's hard to do. That's a very vulnerable process. That doesn't come from a lecture or an instructional how-to video. That comes from the students being in the mud, doing the hard work of slogging through the parts of the process that are confusing and tricky and uncertain. Those are the moments, I think, when students really make their best work, is when there's that degree of unknown and chance involved. So I hope, and I think it's more than hope, I see it really happening, that this department and the whole community of individuals who come here continue to engage with the university as a whole.
Well, Mark, I can't think of a better statement to end with. So just thank you so much for your time. This is just incredible getting a chance to talk with you and sit down. And I hope everybody listening can get a feel for everything that's going on here.
Thank you so much for talking with me. And yeah, for those of you listening, feel free to reach out to me anytime. I'd be happy to connect.